ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भगवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. In this Friday Atma Vichara session, we meditate on Bhagavan's Upadesham, which has been compiled in the name of a book called Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a collection of all the questions put to Bhagavan on Atma Vichara and Bhagavan's answers towards them. This compilation has been done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. And we have been looking on the question answers between 1936 to 1950. After reading this week's question and answer and meditating on it by Bhagavan's abundant grace, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Following that, our President Sharada would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita, which is again a question answer form between Bhagavan's devotee and Bhagavan, and compiled by Ganapati Muni in Sanskrit. Finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. We looked and meditated last 2 weeks on the 79th question, which was, will I be able to realize the self? And Bhagavan had clarified that the self is always realized. If it was to be realized sometime down the later, it cannot be the truth. So, in continuation of the same question, and that the devotee has put another question to Bhagavan, we will look into it this week. Devotee's question is, will I understand it in course of time? Will I understand that the self is realized, always realized, and in course of time is the question. Very relevant for the sadhaka community that we are. Will it happen in the course of time? And Bhagavan is trying to answer that. Let us look at Bhagavan's answer. You are already that. Time and space cannot affect the self. They are in you so also all that you see around you are in you. This answer of Bhagavan has been highlighted by Natarajan Mama. Yes, I read it again. You are already that. Time and space cannot affect the self. They are in you. So also all that you see around you are in you. Bhagavan continues. There is a story to illustrate this point. A lady had a precious necklace around her neck. Once in her excitement, she forgot it and thought that the necklace was lost. She became anxious and looked for it in her home but could not find it. She asked her friends and neighbors if they knew anything about the necklace. They did not. At last, a kind friend of hers told her to feel the necklace around the neck. She found that it had all along been round her neck and she was happy. When others asked her later if she found the necklace which was lost, she said, "Yes, I have found it." She still felt that she had recovered a lost jewel. Now, did she lose it at all? It was all along round her neck, but judge her feelings. She is happy as if she had recovered a lost jewel. Similarly, with us, we imagine that we would realize the self sometime, whereas we are never anything but the self. A wonderful question and a wonderful answer for us to meditate upon. The highlighted part where Bhagavan is saying you are already that, time and space cannot affect the self. They are in you, so also all that you see around you are in you. It's a very important conscious registration that we need to make. That the question being asked, will I realize the self in course of time? Here, somebody has accepted time to be real. Somebody has accepted that there has to be a course of time for one to realize. In a way, when we give reality to time, and the one who has then the question becomes, who is the one who is knowledge of this time? It is the ego. It is the one which can think of yesterday. It is the one which can think of tomorrow. And it is the one now which is claiming I have not realized the self. So, though we have given reality to the time, we have given reality to the ego, who is having past, future, and who believes who has a past, future, and present. And therefore, holding that reality, we are trying to see the self. Now, this is like holding on, giving reality to the snake, trying to find about the rope. So long as we are seeing the snake, we cannot see the rope. So, here Bhagavan is saying that the entire snake that you are trying to see is only a superimposition, or perhaps is all only an imagination on top of the rope. He's saying they are in you. This whole time space is all in you. And the moment you give reality to them and get bound in that, confined in that relative knowledge, this whole thing will I realize tomorrow, everything appears to be very real. And that's why I felt Appa has very clearly identified and highlighted this, that it is all in you. And this is a conscious recognition we need to make. That means the realization is going to be now. It will be always in the now. It is not something in the past or in the future. It is already there. So since it's already there, the possibility of it is in the now. So, and it is the recognition that is the realization. And what is Bhagavan is trying to say, you are already that. So, every moment, every now opportunity is to recognize, relate ourselves to that truth which we are, or relate to that relative thing which is time, space, ego, and all of that, get caught in its boundary and feel we are far away from what we really are. This is the crux of the matter that is there. So further, Bhagavan tries to prove this with a story. He says that a lady had lost a precious necklace, and in her excitement she had forgotten about it, and she went about asking everybody. Now, the part with this story, again, if we are identified with the entity of time and space, the ego, even this story, we get again the thing about the ego is it will always make us. The thing about the ego is it will always make the attention object oriented. So when we are listening to this story, we get carried away with the character of the story. We get carried away with this lady who has lost the necklace and she is going, calling the friends. We get into that imagination of the lady with the lost necklace and trying to find it, and she finally found. But what is it Bhagavan trying to say here? He's asking us to identify ourselves as the lady and our own self as the lost necklace. That is what we are trying to find. And we are going about asking everybody as sadhakas, where is that I am going to find? Where did I keep it? Did you see it? Have you seen it? And things like that. Now that is what we have to identify with this story. Then this story brings about somebody pointing to us, touch your neck and find out, is that the necklace that you are trying to look for? So here again, these satsangs and these Bhagavan statement where he is saying you are that is like recognizing the truth as opposed to identifying ourselves with the sadhakas as the sadhaka trying to find the self, or as a sadhaka trying to understand the self. There is nothing to understand, there is nothing to know. We are the self. Bhagavan is very beautifully again and again repeating. Now, instead of seeing that, if we get carried away in trying to know the self, in trying to understand the self, then we are going to keep on searching like the lost necklace. It is like this. Another analogy which we can see is, if I am the eyes, E-Y-E, it is through this I see everything. Now the eye cannot see itself, but doesn't mean the eye doesn't exist because it cannot see itself, isn't it? It is through the eye we recognize everything. It is through the consciousness all these discussions are being cognized by us. It is not the ears which is cognizing, nor the brain, nor the mind. It is not the ego. It is the self, the pure consciousness which is able to cognize everything. Here and now, Bhagavan is asking us to turn our attention to that. And there we see there is no such attribution or identification with an object, whether with the ego or whether with anything. It is pure self, pure knowledge, pure awareness as it is untouched. And how does Bhagavan tell that it is untouched. He says that in the deep sleep, whatever happened in the course of the day, we are not touched by it. Likewise, even now, when we see the pure consciousness, we recognize whatever may be the incidents that have happened from morning till now. It was like the sun which was giving light to all of it. It neither had aversion nor had attraction. It was simply giving its light to everything that was happening. It was present and it was shining its light on it, the light of consciousness on everything. And that is what we are, the substratum. And Bhagavan is saying that being our natural state and being always eternally present, whether it is waking, dream, or sleep, instead of identifying ourselves with that, why are we identifying with all these superimposed things, the body, the world, and everything, which is all in that self? It's not that the self is inside the body. Bhagavan is saying very beautifully, very first, you are that, and in you all of these things are there. So don't get carried away with the time, space, and everything. And like the heroine of the story, when it was pointed to her, she touched her necklace and she found out that it was never lost. Like that, when it is pointed out to us that we are the self, we are the pure being consciousness, untouched, unmoved, unchanged, eternal, ever aware, ever free from all these happenings. When we are told and when we realize that is our natural state, when we look at our pure consciousness, that it is never pinched. Even if I pinch my body, it is never pinched. It is aware of the pinch, but it is not being pinched. It is always present, whether waking, dream, or sleep. And it is ever free. It has never become anything else. It remained as it is. It is Nitya, Shuddha, Buddha, and Mukta. And when we recognize that, that is what we are, and that is where Bhagavan is pointing to, like the pointing of the necklace by a friend. So Bhagavan is the friend here, who is pointing us to that substratum that we verily are. Then he is saying that in that all of this have arisen, in that all of this exists, and into it all goes back. Therefore, don't identify yourself with this thing and get worried about the lost self. You are the self, and therefore all of this is only a temporary thing that has come and transitory thing that has come, which has no stuff of its own, no substance of its own. When this is recognized, then even the claiming I have found the self is also wrong, because we are already the self. This is the understanding. And when is that understanding going to come about? Is it yesterday or is it tomorrow? Or is it in the now? Or is it already there, therefore there is no time also? This is the enquiry. This is the turning from the object-oriented thing, division-oriented truth, back to that substratum, to that one unity that we already are. And then that is what Bhagavan is asking us to do repeatedly until we firmly understand the error that we do by turning outwards and giving reality to division. The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path for the next 20 minutes. No matter how many thoughts come, which if we attend to, we feel that we have lost the self, lost the necklace. Instead, whenever a thought rises, let us consciously recognize it is the way for us to get caught in a delusion. Therefore, we should diligently inquire to whom is this thought? Who am I? And turn our attention to the source of I, which is our pure being consciousness, which is our substratum, which makes us everything be recognized. Even this thought rising, this inquiry being made possible, this turning of the attention back, all of it, what does it make? What makes us recognize all of it? When we turn our attention to the source here and now, and again, we understand that there we are Nitya Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta. Whereas if we attend to the thoughts, we become Bandha and we have to again and again go through this suffering and ask this question, when am I going to realize? So, with the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. Let us do Atma Vichara for the next 20 minutes. Dr.Sarada.
Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, shining is a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana. In this part of the Friday Satsang, we are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, which are a compilation by Ganapati Muni in Sanskrit, in 18 chapters of replies given by Bhagavan to several questions. Most of them are from disciples of Ganapati Muni. And we are currently meditating on the 9th chapter, which is also a significant chapter. Each has its own significance. The 9th chapter is on the topic of cutting the knot. And we saw that in the first 5 verses, Bhagavan first, after a little bit of silence, as was customary with him, whenever he was asked any question, Bhagavan would be silent, then after a while he would spoke, and the Muni says he spoke in his divine way. So that people have described actually Daivarata only, that Bhagavan's voice, it would be as if it's coming from, it's a very divine voice. It cannot be described as either bass or sharp or not in that way, but it felt a little distant, as if, when we talk of the Asharira Vani in our, we have in our Puranic episodes, in our legendary episodes, we get this divine voice sometimes speaking. And usually when we picturize it, we sort of picturize it as a sort of thundering voice. But here Daivarata actually said that Bhagavan's voice was very ethereal. That's the word we use in English. It was not something which you can place in any way. It was so divine. So Bhagavan spoke, says the Muni, and first he gave the definition of the knot, which is the link between the body and the self. We have seen this definition in the 40 verses on reality also, where Bhagavan says, Deho na janati sato na janma, jada udal naninnada satudiyad. So there is something in between. Ubhayorapi sambandho vijnanena anumiyate. So, shariram syatmanaschapi sambandho granthirujyate. Sambandhenaiva shariram bhavati jnanamatmanaha. Because of that connection only, what happens? One becomes conscious of the body. That's what Bhagavan says. And then further what happens? Bhagavan goes to almost exactly the same definition which he has given in 40 verses. So we saw that Shariram jadametat syat atma chaitanyamishyate ubhayorapi sambandho vijnanena anumiyate. Because the body is inert and the self is pure consciousness, one has to infer the fact that there must be something linking these two. Because why? Because the consciousness is experienced in the body. So how is it that consciousness is experienced in the body? Chaitanya chayaya shrishtam shariram tata cheshtate nidrada ugrahana bhavat uhyate stanamatmana. Like in states like sleep, swoon, etc., abhava, because there is no experience of the body and the world. So one has to infer, says Bhagavan, infer the location of the self. The location of the self has to be inferred. Why inferred? Because it is not our experience. Until one abides in the self, one does not experience the spiritual heart, neither the way the consciousness rises from that. In the chapter on the spiritual heart also, we were told that the consciousness rises from the spiritual heart and through the nadis, it spreads throughout the body. Here, what is the difference between what we were told there and we were told here is Bhagavan is emphasizing the fact that it is a link. There is a link between the body and the Atma. And this is very important. One is that because of this link, in Aksharamanamale, Bhagavan says we can get back to that source using that link, using the Chit-Jada Granthi. So this is Bhagavan's unique aid which is given to us, because normally this knot is looked upon as something very negative. We have even Swami Shivananda's song, Cut the knot, cut the knot, cut the knot of avidya. It is called the knot of avidya, the knot of Maya. Of course, Bhagavan also gives that several names to it. In Ulladinarpadu, also translated by Muni into Sanskrit. So, in that he calls it Chit-Jada Granthi Bandham Deham Nutpamai Ahandai Samsaram, etc. So it goes by various names. It's called subtle body, it is called the knot, it is called bandha, bondage, it is called samsara. But here Bhagavan is saying that this link provides us a doorway into the self. And as I said in Aksharamanamale, Bhagavan has said, Nyamaliyir Keda Nanen Nurudiya Nadi Nin Uruveda Prachala. I am worse than a dog. I am going to trace you back through the scent of consciousness, just as a dog traces its master through the master's scent. This is what Bhagavan tells us in Aksharamanamale. So there is this consciousness, the element of consciousness in the knot. And then what happens? That the light of consciousness spreads throughout the body functions. In the chapter on Hridaya Vidya, Bhagavan says, Samsari Manujo Bhavet. Because of the light of consciousness in the body, one gets attached to the world. But here, Bhagavan is saying that in sleep and swoon, there is no consciousness, there is no awareness of the world. Nidra dau grahana abhava uhyate sthanamatmanaha. This is the clue which Bhagavan gives for the enquiry. Then samai. Since this consciousness is absent in sleep, since this consciousness arises on waking and it makes us aware of the whole body, one can infer that the consciousness is placed within, it has a locale within the frame or the boundary of the body. The location of the self can be inferred, says Bhagavan. Uhyate sthanam atmanaha. So how does it function then? Why is it that we are not able to see the self, even though it is there within the body? Just day before yesterday, when we were meditating on Atma Bodham, Bhagavan is telling us in those verses which we have meditated upon that although the self permeates the entire body, we are not able to locate it anywhere in the body. How does it permeate the entire body? Bhagavan says, Sukshmanam vidyudadinam sthule tantryadike yatha tatha kalebare nadyam chaitanya jyotisho gatihi sthalamekam chaitanya jyotirujjvalam sarvam bhasayate deham Bhaskaro bhuvanam yatha. Sukshmanam vidyudadinam sthule tantradike yatha. Just as the example given by Bhagavan gives two examples in these verses. He says, like the electric current, which is subtle, but which passes through the gross electric wires, so also the consciousness, which is subtle, which is imperceptible, flows through the channels of the which are there. The subtle nadi is there. The nadis are also subtle, but they are more gross compared to the consciousness. Then what happens? Taking hold of that center, being in the center, and it moving the flame of consciousness, he says, he calls it Chaitanya Jyoti. Okay, Salamekam Upashrutya, having one space, one location for itself. The location has already been given to us in the Hridaya Vidya chapter. The location is the heart. So from the heart, what happens? The consciousness lights the entire body the way the sun lights the entire world. The sun is in one location and it lights the entire world. Now, what is the relevance of these verses? Then further he goes on to say, it is because of the spreading of consciousness that one becomes aware of the body. Nadi Shakti Vilasena Chaitanyam Shugatirmata Dehasya Shaktaya Sarva Prathang Nadi Rupashrutaha. The consciousness moves, and what has happened? Vyaptena tat prakashena sharire tvanubhutayah sthalam tadeva hridayam suraya sampratakshate. Here Bhagavan again refers to the spiritual heart and says, the sages say that that center from which the radiation comes is the heart. Salam tadeva hridayam. Now, what is it that is a clue for us in that? We must remain aware that the consciousness that is there in the body first is not belonging to the body. The consciousness is independent of the body. It shines, it permeates the entire body, but it is in no way dependent on the body or bound by the body. And if one needs to be aware of the truth of one's own true nature, one must return to the source, to the consciousness, rather than the attention being fixed on the body. The body is merely jada. Bhagavan has told us in Upadesha Saram also, Vigraha Indriya Pranadhi Tamaha Tat Jadam Hi Asat. They are not the truth. They are all jada. So the body here is jada, but the body is permeated by consciousness. So whenever we experience any part of the body, say for example, even if we have a small headache, then we can become aware, okay, now my consciousness is, I am focusing my consciousness on my head and becoming aware of the headache. At the same time, I can shift, even within the body, I can shift my attention to my hand or my foot. If I shift my attention to the hand or the foot, at that time my attention is not on the head. So it is only through the flow of consciousness. So just like the sunlight, even though the sunlight is lighting the whole world, there are some parts which are lit and some parts which are in shadow. Now, what happens? Why is it the part is lit? That part which is turned towards sunlight is lit. That part which is away from the sun is in shadow or darkness. Even so, whichever part or whichever aspect of the objects, including the body, is lighted up by the attention, consciousness focused through attention, comes into our awareness. So we recognize, when we recognize this, we realize that it is only consciousness that is supreme. There's also another exercise given by Bhagavan as a support to self-enquiry in the talks, where he says one can become aware of oneself from head to foot. This is because the consciousness from the heart pervades the body from head to foot. He says, become conscious of yourself from head to foot, and then drop the head to foot. Just become conscious. Now, how does this help us in our self-enquiry? It helps us to identify with the consciousness. However, this practice is only a support. It is not self-enquiry per se, because one need not think of head to foot in self-enquiry. One need not think of anything at all in self-enquiry. One need not hold on to any concept in self-enquiry, but all these concepts which Bhagavan is giving us over here, they are supports to take our mind back to the self, to detach ourselves from the body idea. Because ultimately, what is it that stands between us and the experience of the self? It is the body idea. It is the I am the body idea. And our entire sadhana is to undermine this I am the body idea, or to become convinced of the fact that one is not the body. The moment one is totally convinced of that fact, then nothing further remains to be done. The question, who am I, is one of the most powerful means, or one may say the most powerful means, to undermine the I am the body idea. All these other concepts which Bhagavan is giving us about the not help us, they support us to understand this. And on the other side, if at all there is an unconscious fear in us, conscious or unconscious fear that we may end up in a void when we give up the I am the body idea, we are told that this body idea is only springing up because of the consciousness that is lighting the body. And when the I am the body idea is cut, then one would remain as pure consciousness. The consciousness does not depend on this linkage, on the knot. So when the knot is cut, metaphorically, knot is cut. It is not a physical knot. It is only a subtle knot. So when Bhagavan says, if you de-link it from the body, it will automatically subside into the self. By Bhagavan's grace, this every word of his is anubhava, and it turns each of us back to the anubhava of dissolving the knot. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
अपार असत Chit Sukhavadidashe Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami